Hey Pavel, I thought it might be more handy for me to make you a little video tutorial to start with, because I know it's quite tricky to follow on the screen if I'm doing something live. It can just get a little bit confusing, so yeah, my hope is to get you started with this video, and then yeah, if you require a bit more kind of troubleshooting, we can do that in a one-to-one session. But yeah, let's get you started with being able to open the scan data, edit it, and yeah, have a bit of fun with it. So first thing first, I'm going to import the scan data with the import button here. Where did I put it? It's here. So I've got your ANA scan data. Close the lightbox, and we just drag to open it in the space. I'm holding Shift to lock it in the straight on view, and then go into edit mode. I then want to apply the texture to the model. So we're going to go to texture, import, we have the PNG. For some reason in ZBrush it imports your texture inverted, well upside down, so what you need to do is click it, flip it vertically, and then we go to the texture map menu, click here and select your texture, and it will apply it to the model. If we change our material from red to something more neutral, maybe skin shade, you can see here it's got the texture really nice. Next thing I want to do is just to orientate this a bit better in the workspace, because we can see here that we're in a front on view, but Anna's tilted forward. So what we want to do is just turn to the side. Again, I'm holding Shift. I begin to drag, and then if I press Shift, it locks it to the side, right? And then what I can do is use a move gimbal to begin to orientate. Again, if I'm dragging around and I press Shift, it locks it upright. And then I'm just going to reset the gimbal, so I'm going to unlock it, reset it, lock it again, and then I can also just tilt her a little bit more front on. Maybe I think she needs to go a little bit. Okay, this just helps you get a nice sort of view that matches what the software thinks you're looking at. So next thing we want to do is close these holes, right? The problem is, if we perform a Dynamesh, which will close the holes, it will also remove the texture. So what we want to do is convert the texture to something called polypaint, which kind of bakes it into the surface and means that when we manipulate the scan, the polypaint will actually adjust to meet the manipulations. So if you go to polypaint, what we want to do is press polypaint from texture. However, you have to have material RGB channel switched on. If you just press polypaint from texture, you'll get this error message. So just make sure you have mRGB switched on. Polypaint from texture. This has now actually baked that texture onto the surface, and now we can perform a Dynamesh to close the holes. So I've just gone into geometry, Dynamesh, switch off blur, resolution, let's set that to 600, and hit Dynamesh. That's then closed over the holes, which is great. We've now got like a solid surface or a non-manifold surface. It has quite a high poly count, you know, it's like 800,000, but that means that we have a really nice dense surface to manipulate, and you'll just bring that back down when you're ready to export by using the decimation master in the Z plugin menu. So once you've done all your manipulations and everything, you can bring that file size back down using the decimation master. So anyway, at this stage, with our nice high density mesh, you can actually start using the brushes to manipulate the design. So let's just pick a random brush. Let's go for inflate. So if I zoom out a little bit, maybe increase my draw size. If I begin to then go on the mesh, you see it's actually editing it quite nicely. If you get stretched out geometry, so as you're using the brush, if it begins to break your geometry, which you'll see actually visible on the surface, just redo the Dynamesh, so switch it off and back on, and it will re-Dynamesh that surface to allow you to keep working on it, which is going to be really handy. And so you can, yeah, then just keep manipulating it. You might also want to use like the smooth, let's turn that down a little bit, Yeah, like use the smooth just to stop it going too fragmented. Just smoothing over the lines that we made when we were stretching it out. And at any point when you feel like the topology is getting damaged or broken, which doesn't generally happen when you're smoothing, but if you begin to do, you know, lots and lots of marks and stuff, just reset that Dynamesh. So yeah, you can straight away begin to manipulate the scan. What you might also want to do is like chop bits away. So to do that, you're going to hold Control Shift, and you're going to get this kind of menu, which if you click it, you have different types of like cuts and creasing you can do. So I will go for Trim Curve. I'm still holding down Control Shift. If I then drag across the model, it draws a line. If I release, it will cut there, or if I keep holding Control Shift and then hold down Spacebar, I can actually move that cutting line, and then I can cut wherever it is that I want on the model. Yeah. So again, that's Control Shift. Pick the type of clip or cutting brush that you want. I use Trim Curve. Drag across the model. If you release now, it will cut, or if you hold down Shift while still holding Control, sorry, if you hold down Space while still holding Control Shift, you can actually move where your cutting line is going to be. Yeah. One thing that I think you'll probably find quite fun to play around with in terms of like deforming the shape is the deformation menu, which can be found just here. And this just has lots of different sliders that you can pull, and it will adjust the model. So you can use like inflate, you can use spherize. There's all sorts of different like modifiers that you can use for manipulating the model. The thing that's quite fun is you've got the slider, but then you also have these X, Y, and Z like smaller buttons, which you can switch on and off. And depending which axis you have switched on, X, Y, or Z, it will actually manipulate it along that axis. So aside from manipulating with the slider, you can also adjust how the slider is manipulating it with the X, Y, and Z axis. So you can probably start to have quite a lot of fun with this, just using this deformation menu. Don't forget, if your surface is getting quite damaged, keep repeating your Dynamesh process, just so that you can keep editing it cleanly. Yeah, I think that's probably enough to get you started with. So have a go at following this process of importing, applying the texture, turning it to polypane, closing the mesh, and then actually beginning to manipulate the mesh surface. Let me know if you have any problems, and yeah, I hope you have fun with it.